Welcome to this week's edition of Law of the Wolf. I'm your host, Joe Giglio. I just want to go over the format for this week's podcast. I'm going to talk to Scott Wood first. Scott Wood, Wolfpack great. We'll go over the basketball results from the past week, and we'll talk about this week's games coming up. And then I have an interview with Erik Kramer. Erik Kramer is a former quarterback at NC State, went on to have success in the NFL, and now has a book about his life. And just as a warning for people out there, that part of that book, a big part of his story, is he attempted to commit suicide. And Erik writes about this, and now he is someone who tries to help people with depression and mental health issues. And I just want to make sure everyone knows that the topic we're going to cover in that conversation, and just want to make sure everyone also knows, if you or someone you know is in crisis, you can call or you can text the 988 Suicide in Crisis Lifeline. The Lifeline provides 24-hour confidential support to anyone in suicidal crisis or emotional distress. Call 911 in life-threatening situations. And if you are worried about a friend's social media updates, you can contact safety teams at the social media company. They will reach out and connect with that person when they need help. Again, it's 988 Suicide Crisis Lifeline.
I think my juices flow all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know as much as I know.
Right now, we've been able to stuff the stuff.
The curse is broken. NC State fans, finally. Finally.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
I mean, that's a triple play.
Wolfpack ain't for soft. It ain't for soft people.
Scott Wood, you are here for a very specific reason this week. I need you to talk basketball, and I need you to try to convince, not me, but maybe some other state fans out there who are now concerned after the home loss to Virginia Tech that their NCAA tournament hopes are now dashed. And now somehow this 5-2 start in the ACC is all washed away because of a home loss to a team, in my opinion, fairly accomplished on the offensive end of the floor in Virginia Tech, actually a top 60 team in KenPom. So I think not me, but I think there are some fans who need a little pep talk about what the value of that Virginia Tech game was and what it wasn't.
Yeah, so what if I told you I'm on the panic side?
Okay, that's okay. Maybe I can talk you out
Which
of.
I'm not. I think
Okay.
it's very simple for me. If I told you we could start the ACC 5-2, and over the next, what is that, 7 games?
Right.
Go 5-2 again.
Right.
You would take it. I would take 10-4 in the ACC. Would you not?
Okay, so this is hard for you're not even in the older group of people, of fans. But in the old days, when it was a round robin, it was, okay, we're just going to go 8-8 in league play. We'll make the tournament. We'll go 7-9. Some teams would go 7-9. Heck, if I remember correctly, Florida State went 6-10 one year.
Back when the ACC was elite.
Back when the ACC was the ACC, you played everyone twice, and there was a little bit more of a more easily comparable numbers, right?
Yeah.
So in the last few years, I think most people have started to come around to your conference record doesn't matter, even in the ACC. What matters are the teams that you do end up beating in the ACC. The one thing from Saturday I just didn't understand, because of knowing where Virginia Tech was in the net and in KenPom, they're not a bad team. I mean, they were 2-4 in the league, but if you look at their losses, they're not a bad team. They're a team that can really get hot and shoot the ball, which they did in the second half. I just don't think it's the type of loss that's going, like if you lost to Louisville last year, you're Clemson.
Yeah.
You lost to Louisville. That eliminated them from the NCAA tournament. That mark on their resume eliminated them from the NCAA tournament, even though they had 3 wins over NC State, which kind of dovetails nicely into the conversation about what I believe NC State's path to the NCAA tournament is.
Well, the one thing I will say is I feel like we've hit the point. There's a sense of urgency. It's not a panic.
Agree.
But there needs to be a sense of urgency. There's some big games coming up that they need to be able to take advantage of. I agree with you. I think Virginia Tech is a solid team. Yeah. I don't think they're as good as Wake.
But I don't think there are any bad teams in the ACC. Pittsburgh was in last place before they went to
Notre Dame's not very good.
Notre Dame's not very good, but even at home, they've been spunky.
Yep, and this is where I would say too. they gave a lot in that Wake Forest game. There was also a bug, whether or not it got throughout the team.
Yeah, you're right. We haven't
I
even
don't
talked about the Wake game, even though it was their best one in the season.
How about some turnover issues have kind of came up, and I think that's due to they don't have what I would call primary ball handler. I think they're a committee when it comes to ball handling. Also, defensively, they were very good defensively in the first half. They created, problems for Virginia Tech, and then all of a sudden, they started to handle the pressure. So I think that's where we also have to make the adjustment, maybe a little bit less pressing, so we're not giving up some easy ones. Let's just be a really good half-court defensive team, especially when they're handling the pressure well. Because at the end of the day, we're a better half-court offensive team than we have been in the past, but we're still not a good half-court offensive team. So we got to get stops and get out in transition.
The producers in my ear saying we did talk about the Wake Forest win last week. That was our setup to the Virginia Tech game on Saturday. My apologies to the faithful listeners of Law of the Wolf. This is how I see, this week they have Virginia tomorrow night, and then they go to Syracuse, which I look at and I'm like, this is the part where I look at Syracuse kind of like Virginia Tech. I look at Syracuse. They look a lot like Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
They look a lot like Boston College. And they're not a bad team, but at Pittsburgh, they're not going to help you though either. I have identified 4 games that I think NC State must win 3 of to make the NCAA tournament.
You said 4?
I have 4 games. So they're 5-2.
Miami, Clemson, Carolina, Duke.
Not Carolina. I don't think they're going to beat Carolina.
Oh.
Okay. I have Miami on the 30th of this month. It's at home. That is a absolute must win.
Okay.
At Clemson, they're going to have to split between that trip to Clemson and the trip to Florida State.
All right.
In the way that Florida State's playing, they're putting themselves in a position to make the NCAA tournament. I also think Florida State will get Carolina down at Tallahassee. And then March 4th, that might as well be an ACC tournament game against Duke at home. So I think they have, of those 4 games, I think they have to beat Miami and Duke at home, and then they have to split the Clemson and Florida State trips. If they go 3-1 in those games, they can go 4-5 in the other 9. Totally and completely doable. That's a 12-8 league record. And at that point, you would have wins over the other teams like you vying to get into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and I lived, when I played in AC, I lived by, look, you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. Okay? Yeah. If you lose to one of those teams, have to get a game you're not supposed to win. So I think going forward, they got to win the ones they're supposed to get. I think, Virginia and Syracuse are 2 winnable games. Historically, Kevin Keatts teams have played Virginia well.
They have, but I do not anticipate them winning this game.
I don't know, man. I'm telling you, they've had Virginia's number, and they drugged them when they came to Raleigh. Now, obviously,
they got them pretty good. But
I also believe that now there's going to be a little bit of a scout, so it's going to be some cat and mouse there. NC State has not been shooting the ball well, which if you're going to beat a Virginia team, you need to shoot the ball well from the outside. Very similar to Syracuse. You got to be able to space the floor. But also, this has been a roller coaster NC State team where all of a sudden they're shooting 50% from 3 out of nowhere, and then the next game they don't make one. So I think they're winnable. Do they win? I don't know, but I think they also have matched up historically well with Virginia.
Does it hurt your eyes to watch this team shoot from the 3-point line?
Yes, but there's nothing I can do to help that. I hate to say it. I just, I think I call them, we have capable shooters.
Yeah.
I don't call them good shooters. So at some point, they just got to have some consistency there. I'm not asking for 40% from 3, but they got to shoot. They got to make something, because if I'm guarding them, I'm just playing them to get to the drive. I'm not fouling them. I'm making them score over me, and it's going to be a rough day at the office. But they got to be able to spread the floor at some capacity. I think Casey's got to get a little bit of his confidence back. He's got to understand that first and foremost, your priority is to space the floor. If there's a closeout there, then you put the ball on the floor. I think he's trying to mix it up, maybe even a little bit too much, getting into his bag instead of just spacing the floor. I don't think Jaden Taylor's an overly good shooter. I just think he's really streaky. DJ Horn is a guy. He's a guy that can make threes. He needs to take threes, and he's got to shoot them with confidence. So I think they got some pieces there. I just think they're just so up and down that they're a big confidence team. If they see a couple go in, they start riding that wave. And if they see a couple miss, they just kind of say, you know what, let's get in the paint and try and get to our floaters and get all the way to the rim.
I thought Saturday, the loss to Virginia Tech was unusual in the sense that they were really good defensively in the first half. And then in the second half, and they couldn't take advantage of all of the turnovers
Correct.
that they produced in the first
Correct.
half. And that is demoralizing. When you get to halftime and you're like, wait a minute, like we're killing this team. And you're up 3, and you're like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
You should be up 20 or whatever it should have been. I thought the second half, they just didn't get any stops. I mean, plain and simple.
Yeah.
I mean,
they got blown by. Now there was a couple ones down the stretch where they made some tough ones, but again, that's what good teams do. They're going to make a few tough ones. And I think that's my thing going back to that game is obviously I think they got to capitalize more on the turnovers they forced. Especially that first 10 minutes, they could have been up 10, 12 points, and they just couldn't capitalize. And then the next point is if they don't get stops, they are going to struggle. They are not a half-court team. They never have been. It's just kind of how the offense is set up. They are meant to be in transition and attacking, getting downhill. And when they don't get those stops, they can't do it.
you played a non-conference game against Syracuse, Saturday's opponent, but you did not. They were not in the league while you were. What do you remember about playing that zone? Now, they were number 1 in the country when you played them that year. What do you remember about the way that they played that zone? It just seems like they're I know the coach was obviously there under Boeheim, but I kind of appreciate the fact that he's doing his own thing.
Yeah,
I like that.
I hate to say it, as you should. I've always believed you got to mix up defenses. It can't be just, I mean, unless you're that good of a defensive team, all man-to-man or all 2-3 zone. You got to mix and match it. So, especially with them, they've always just been a long, athletic team. I never really cared to play against, even though I'm a shooter, never cared to play against zone because I feel like offensive gets stagnant.
Okay.
You just start standing. I always felt when I played my best basketball, I was moving, felt involved, whether I'm scoring or not. But they've always just been long, athletic. They understand where the gaps are. And it's you taking shots in that zone end up being NBA threes, not college threes, because they kind of force you out so far with that length and athleticism. So, again, it's going to be one of those matchups that you got to be able to make shots and you got to have some playmakers in that middle. I think the nice part is even if you put DJ in the middle, he's a good enough passer and a capable 15-foot shooter. He can make some plays.
We definitely did not hit the Scott Wood rule of 4 in that game.
Which one? The second one or the first one?
88-72. Number 1 Syracuse. When you put him here in Raleigh, you had 8 points.
You're not looking at the first one.
This is I thought you only played them once.
We played well. We got there was a stretch there where they increased the lead out to 10. And then I feel like
Deion Waiters was on that. That team was
got going
like crazy.
Well, what I'm saying is the year before at the Carrier Dome.
Before they got man.
I played really well.
I see it.
We
now.
did not win though.
Okay.
And your rule of 4 would have
would have been one of the exceptions.
Yeah.
The Dome, one thing I appreciate about Syracuse, when you cover NC State, okay, you're going to see some empty buildings when you go on the road.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you cover Carolina, like everybody comes out to see Carolina and Duke. They don't play in front of any empty gyms.
Yeah.
NC State does. So when you guys went to Syracuse, and I was like, man, I was not expecting a full house. And it was.
Yeah.
And that's the way that they are. They support that program in a way I'm not even sure. Like it's on the same level as their support.
Yeah.
Is on the same level as Carolina and Kentucky in terms of like interest in the program and kind of living and dying with it. Like they're totally, every breath is with the orange.
So I always did my workout in like one of those little muscle shirts. So all 170 pounds and one of those little muscle shirts coming out to do my warm up. And I tell you, out of all the places I've played, I got the most slander and hate at Syracuse. I wasn't even in their conference. And they were just giving it to me.
18 points
in warm ups. All over the place. I mean, some of the things that they said was very hurtful, and I had to take that home. So your mom would not have been happy. They were at the game. She would have stood up for me if she'd heard it.
That must have been a career high in rebounds. 8.
Man, I'm just an athlete. 170-pound athlete,
The
man.
2 dimes might be a career high too.
Easy. Listen, I always said if guys would make more shots, I'd have more assists. It's pretty simple. Just make shots. I gave Richard the ball. He just takes too many dribbles down there.
I'm choosing to slander you right
It's
now.
okay.
I don't really understand, but
I played them well. They did a much better job the second time around when I played them. And again, I think that's one of the big pieces. Like even this Virginia game, yeah, we got the best of them the first game, but now that there's game film, there's going to be a lot of adjustments. So to expect the same outcome is not going to happen. It's always hard to beat someone twice, especially in ACC play.
yeah, like I said, I'm expecting a different result in this game. I'm not down on Virginia the way that some people are. I think they've figured a couple of things out too since, they lost to State, they lost to Wake, and then they beat Virginia Tech, they beat Georgia Tech on the road. So they've won their last 2.
Wake's a good team. I mean, they
spent all day.
They played well against Carolina for a half, and then the wheels kind of came off.
Yeah.
But again, I do like Wake. I like Forbes. I like the things that they do. So I expect them, especially coming down at the end of the season, to be one of those maybe top 5, top 6 in the ACC, just creeping right there.
All right. Well, before we do all of my ads, let's make sure I just noticed this too from last week watching the episode. I said, we're going to talk to Scott Wood about mortgages, and I never did. I'm a bad person. Scott Wood. I did put it on the screen though. ScottWood15.com. Talk to me. The numbers are starting to move the right way, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's going the right way. Everybody's kind of getting those tax valuations that are coming in the mail, and everybody's like, oh, I can get X amount for my house, which is not necessarily the case, as any realtor would tell you right now. But it may push some people into selling. So maybe we get a few more houses on the market than what we've had in the past. Plus, with the rates dropping, people starting to move a little bit. But again, even if you think you're a ways out, just reach out, have a conversation. We can kind of crunch some rough numbers, feel some things out, and we're just here to help you any way we can.
It's the best way to save money, the best way to put yourself in a position to be in a new home in 2024. So reach out at ScottWood15.com. All right. Year 3 of a NC State podcast for me, and year 3 of the support of my friend Hayes Lancaster, Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority. Hayes is a big supporter of NC State athletics. You could see him at almost all of those basketball games, all the football games. You want to support businesses for people who help NC State, support Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority, even better. Save yourself some money. Go online, go to bugsbite.com. Whether you got ants in the house, ants outside the house, you got mice, you got moisture issues underneath the house, do yourself a favor. Go to bugsbite.com, punch in your zip code. You'll see all kinds of ways to bundle and save and protect your number one investment, which is your home. And if you're looking for a new home, or maybe you need to sell yours, go to Hometown Realty. It's myhtr.com. That's myhtr.com. You can buy, sell, calculate. You want to get in the new construction in the area after you hit up Scott Wood and say, hey, man, what can I afford? Do yourself a favor. Get to myhtr.com. They'll get you in on all of the new construction in this area, get you set up here in 2024, get ahead of that frenzy, and go with the experts. 6 locations, more than 250 agents. It's myhtr.com. And you're going to close on that house, and you're going to need help. That's where Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer, attorneys at law, Whitaker and Hamer, wh.lawyer. Josh, also a big State fan. Josh and his bar Shady's in downtown Gardner. If you're looking to support Josh in a way that you can, maybe you don't have any traffic issues like me. maybe you're not selling a business, but again, any kind of legal needs that you have, Josh is there for you. It's wh.lawyer. The best way to be swagged out this basketball season with the best jackets, hoodies, t-shirts, hats, golf shirts, you name it, they have it. It's homefieldapparel.com. Homefieldapparel.com. Use that promo code OG23 and you will save 15%. So again, go to homefieldapparel.com, use the promo code OG23, and save 15%. And finally, breeze through. If you are next week headed over to that Miami game, go over to the breeze through right there on the corner of Trinity and Edwards Mill. Get yourself some dark roast coffee. Get yourself some pregame frosty tall boys. Get yourself some snacks. Get yourself some gas. They've got it all. 17 locations in the state. There's likely one near you. Check out the breeze through. They have you covered wherever you go. Year 3 of a NC State podcast for me, and year 3 of the support of my friend Hayes Lancaster, Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority. Hayes is a big supporter of NC State athletics. You could see him at almost all of those basketball games, all the football games. You want to support businesses for people who help NC State, support Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority, even better. Save yourself some money. Go online, go to bugsbite.com. Whether you got ants in the house, ants outside the house, you got mice, you got moisture issues underneath the house, do yourself a favor. Go to bugsbite.com, punch in your zip code. You'll see all kinds of ways to bundle and save and protect your number one investment, which is your home. And if you're looking for a new home, or maybe you need to sell yours, go to Hometown Realty. It's myhtr.com. That's myhtr.com. You can buy, sell, calculate. You want to get in the new construction in the area after you hit up Scott Wood and say, hey, man, what can I afford? Do yourself a favor. Get to myhtr.com. They'll get you in on all of the new construction in this area, get you set up here in 2024. Get ahead of that frenzy and go with the experts. 6 locations, more than 250 agents. It's myhtr.com. And you're going to close on that house, and you're going to need help. That's where Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer, attorneys at law, Whitaker and Hamer, WH.lawyer. Josh, also a big state fan. Josh and his bar Shady's in downtown Gardner. If you're looking to support Josh in a way that you can, maybe you don't have any traffic issues like me. maybe you're not selling a business, but again, any kind of legal needs that you have, Josh is there for you. It's WH.lawyer. The best way to be swagged out this basketball season with the best jackets, hoodies, t-shirts, hats, golf shirts, you name it, they have it. It's homefieldapparel.com. Homefieldapparel.com. Use that promo code OG23 and you will save 15%. So again, go to homefieldapparel.com, use the promo code OG23 and save 15%. And finally, breeze through. If you are next week headed over to that Miami game, go over to the breeze through right there on the corner of Trinity and Edwards Mill. Get yourself some dark roast coffee. Get yourself some pregame frosty tall boys. Get yourself some snacks. Get yourself some gas. They've got it all. 17 locations in the state. There's likely one near you. Check out the breeze through. They have you covered wherever you go. Joining me now on the Heister Automotive Group hotline, Erik Kramer. Erik Kramer played football at NC State. Erik Kramer played football in the NFL. But I feel like now in 2024, that's not why you should know Erik Kramer. Erik Kramer, I want to say, is an advocate for mental health, is a champion for mental health, and has written a book about his own struggles. And it's called The Ultimate Comeback: Surviving Suicide, Conquering Depression, and Living with a Purpose. You can purchase that on Amazon. I'll flash it up here in a second so you guys can find it. But it's a fascinating story. It's a powerful story, and one that, quite frankly, here on an NC State podcast, we like to complain about, making the NCAA tournament or trying to get to 10 wins or winning an ACC championship for the first time since 1979 in football, when you can forget that there are bigger things out there. And so I want to take this time to thank you, Erik, for like I said, for being a champion for mental health. And I did read the book yesterday, and I would like to start with this quote from you from the book, which I think is kind of encapsulates some of the things that you're after now in what I would call the second act of your life. One way to collectively beat depression is to give each other hope. Look out for one another and care for each other. You never know whose spirits you may boost or whose life you may save. I mean, not to get all deep here on Law of the Wolf, Eric, but those are strong words, man.
Well, there's never in my opinion, there's never a wrong part of the day for something that might be thought provoking and action and leading to action. So yeah, I think that's it's amazing to me since co-authoring this book with William Croyle, is that how many people have either themselves experienced depression or know somebody close to them who has. And which obviously in my case, I had thought about it more than once, but I actually did attempt suicide one time. And fortunately was not successful in that attempt. And which kind of, the book is certainly, football was a part of my life. And so the book has some football experience, but it's more about the life I lived while playing football. There's no X's and O's in it. And so there's a lot of perspective there in terms of, having done it years ago and lived a certain way that leads to the way I live today. And I would imagine that a lot of people, and the feedback I've received, whether it be from you that we have just literally met right now, or people that have known me my whole life, there seems to be something in there for everybody.
So the book starts with your suicide attempt, which is you shot yourself and you somehow survived. Yeah, and you somehow survived this, and you've kind of shown this in like I said, your second act in life, a purpose to try to help other people. I'm curious, you're 59 years old, and when you were growing up, and you detail in the book about your relationship with your father and how difficult that was for you. And I think a lot of people had that type of relationship in that era. When you now think about where we are in mental health in terms of talking about it and expressing it to, not just your therapist, but other people, strangers, and the people that you love and your former teammates, what has been kind of the reaction from them in how they've, how you've shared your story and how maybe it has impacted them?
Well, I think if you go back about, maybe 5 to 7 years, prior to that, the two terms mental health never did go together in the same sentence. And now it's become more, it's in every walk of life. So not just pro sports, because now pro sports all have, and it doesn't matter what sport we're talking about, all have some clinician on board that players can go speak to. What they don't really have a lot of right now are mental health programs. And so, and I'm talking about schools, companies, sports, colleges, it doesn't matter, high school. And so I think that, when I was playing, I did see a therapist specifically for playing football. And I guarantee you there wasn't anybody else on any team I played on doing that. And I think that's what helped raise the level of my play from what it was going to be, which it really wasn't. And then being able to sort of, through mindful training and breathing and I always forget this term, guided imagery.
Okay.
And so I still do that. And so I don't play anymore, but it's a great way to go through life, knowing it's kind of like when you're driving your car, okay, and it's a green light, and then it turns yellow. Well, you know red's coming. So why wouldn't you want to prepare for red? Why wouldn't you want to put brakes on the car? And so, whereas today I don't struggle with depression. That doesn't mean I don't have a strong, what I would call home team around me. But I do from time to time have issues with what they call, what is it called? Impulse control.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a situation where maybe to someone else, there wouldn't be a situation there, I'll perceive it as one and then have to go solve it in an inappropriate way.
Yeah.
That's something I struggled with years ago, 2-3 years ago. And so one of the issues there is I wasn't sleeping. Like it was not uncommon for me to go 24 hours and not sleep. It was not uncommon for me to go an hour or two. Like my normal sleep would be about at max 3 hours. This for 2-3 years. And so then I started literally taking, I went to a neurologist who's a brain specialist and started taking, I already take anti-seizure medication. And the thought was, am I taking too much? And he said, no, not at all. I got patients that take a whole lot more than you do. Yeah. And he says, how about if we try a couple things? One would be some literally 5 milligrams of time-release melatonin, and the other one would be B6 to aid in the anti-seizure medication. Oh my God, sleeping was a changed person. But that still didn't take away all the impulse control, right? So the therapist I now see, I was telling her the same thing I told you. And just the other day, my girlfriend, Anna, who's been a champion throughout this whole scenario, for no apparent reason, we were on the phone the other day, other morning. And her level began to rise for some reason. And then I said, okay, do you notice how your level's rising and mine's not? And could we just back off of that a little bit?
Yeah.
And she said, okay. Well, then it started to raise again. And I said, I don't get why this is happening. So then we hung up and we got on the phone later and it happened again. And so I had basically done what I'm now saying.
Yeah.
Is that when this level has the potential to rise, while it's happening, I'm already have told myself, I've game planned going in. Like when someone else rises something, I'm going to back off. When I might feel the need out of the blue, I'm not. And so this is when you're training your mind, how is that different than training your body? So your mind, you don't see. Your body, you do. If you got a broken arm, there's a cast there. Or if you're working out to train, obviously you're physically doing that. But why doesn't your brain need a workout too? And so that's what, moving forward today, that's what I'm about, is knowing that everybody, here's somebody was going to ask me this the other day on another Raleigh podcast, but he didn't ask the question. He said, the question he sent to me was, what's the biggest misperception about mental health? And what I was going to say then and what I'll say right now is that everybody needs it. You don't see it, but guaranteed everybody's got issues. And how to solve their internal ones, that's the issue. how to do it in a way where you're not negatively affecting someone else. Most people don't see themselves, and as the rest of the people they encounter see them.
Yeah.
And that's what therapy can help with. It's what having a friend or two who we're all being observed, like it or not. And so if you can, while you're out and about during your daily lives, observe somebody that has the kind of qualities that you would consider good characteristics of a person, whatever those are for you, and then eventually approach that person, that one or two persons, and it could be somebody older, not old, doesn't matter. Age is not an issue. It's the way they maturely or don't maturely listen, actively listen, empathetically listen. And I guarantee you there's some out there that do that. You just have to observe it. And so then the idea is you go approach them and say, hey, I've noticed this about you, and here's what I like about it. And here's what makes me stand here today asking you, would you be someone I could come to on a regular basis? Would you potentially come towards me if you saw something that was not quite right? And it's as simple as that. Certainly a therapist would help in that regard, but not everybody can have one. But at the same time, I guarantee you there are empathetic people around you that you might just not have considered why you would want them around you. It's good to have a friend like that, but it's even better to have a friend like that you can confide in, or a friend that would kind of approach you because they're observant too. That might be one of the things that you like about them.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting to hear you say about the broken bone. Someone I love was dealing with depression and needed help. And what I had said was, if your leg if you had a compound fracture, we wouldn't sit here and go, let's, tape it up and, figure it out how to solve it at home,
Right.
maybe go to sleep and think about it. No, you would go and treat it. And to me, that's what depression is, very obviously the solution is not the same as, putting the pin back in the leg and putting the cast on for 8 months or 8 weeks and moving it along. I mean, it's
but the idea that I think you're making and that I'm making is this is a medical issue.
Yeah.
And there are doctors that are specifically trained in what to do, just like they're specifically trained to fix X, Y, and Z in your body. There's other doctors that are trained to listen and to observe and to they do have the aerial perspective. They've heard your stories and others like you a million times.
The name of the book is The Ultimate Comeback. It's available on Amazon. Erik Kramer is the author. Do you have some time to talk a little bit of football with me?
Of course.
Okay. I didn't know how much time you had for me today. Where would you like to start? Would you like to start with your NFL career, or would you like to go back to the NC State days?
Well, you name it. Obviously the Lions are a big story.
Right. You were a great answer to a trivia question about a week ago before Jared Goff kind of stole your thunder.
Well, he didn't really steal it. He just joined a small club. And so I don't know Jared, but if he was sitting here today, I would tell him how proud I am of him because we all know why he ended up in Detroit. We all know that he was the sole reason the Rams lost the Super Bowl.
That's it. It's all the quarterback's fault.
Well, he did play poorly. There's no doubt about that. And so, however, what he did since being in Detroit has been remarkable because they were a crap team when he arrived. And he's been the cog as to why they're no longer and now why they're relevant again. And he went through about a 3 or 4 game where his play dipped late in the season. And what I'm so proud of him for is that this is life. Life is coming. I don't care who's patting you on the back or how great you're doing. Life is right around the corner, meaning obstacles. And so he wrote it out when the same people who were patting him on the back were all of a sudden questioning, wow, is he really the right guy? Yes, he turned out to be, because after that skid, he had the self-determination and resiliency to not panic and just keep playing. And that I was at that game last week, where they beat the Rams. Both quarterbacks played near flawless games, but it was Jared Goff that had all the questions about him coming in. And so that's, to me, he, along with a few other players, to me, he's the lead story of the NFL.
So I'm 48 years old. I'll be 49 this year. So my freshman year at NC State was 1993. So I missed your era. So I don't remember you at NC State. I remember the Lions team. I remember you guys beating the Cowboys in the playoffs. I remember you losing to Washington the next week. I remember Mike Utley. I remember that story. Before reading the book, I did not remember how you got into the NFL. The picket line and the strike and all those other. I completely did not know anything about that. So I'm sure that was that was a hurdle that you had to overcome. Probably seems insignificant now. And I remember the Bears, your tenure with the Bears. That's kind of amazing. I'm just looking at some of your numbers because football has completely changed, right? The way that quarterback stats and the way that the game is played is completely changed. Yeah. And please don't take this as me being a jerk to you, but I'm looking at your numbers. You were the ACC Player of the Year in 1986, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You had more interceptions than touchdowns that year. Like, do you really think in 2023 you would be voted the ACC Player of the Year with more interceptions than like? It's just like I wasn't there, so I don't know. Maybe you guys were like super cutting edge.
Here's why that happened. Yeah. Is you're right, because today is a much more stats, numbers.
Yeah.
People who follow the game follow it because of the stats. Fantasy football is so interwoven into anything you're watching these days. The fans have no freaking idea what leads to those numbers, good or bad.
Right.
And so here's why that happened. Because for 3 seasons, NC State was 3-8, 3-8, 3-8. I was on the last end of that 3-8. Like I was on the team that went 3-8. That got blasted by Furman, where Dick Sheridan
was. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So he comes to NC State. We were 1 game away from winning the ACC. So there was a game that we played prior to the last one, prior to the last ACC game, where we beat South Carolina on a Hail Mary to Danny Peebles.
Yes.
Prior to that, earlier in that game, I got a high ankle sprain, meaning I got through that game. The next game was against Virginia, who we would have absolutely destroyed.
3-8 Virginia, yes, and you lost.
And we lost. I tried playing some of that game, and it was like it just wasn't going to happen. I was basically walking in pain. So had that not happened, we would have won the ACC.
Okay.
And so
did Clemson end up winning the league that year? I see them at 8-2-2.
I'm not sure, but we destroyed Clemson.
Yes.
And
27-3. I have it in front of me now. So
I got it. Could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
So anyway, the turnaround was the reason why that happened. But I get what you're saying. I mean, these days you don't win anything if you have more interceptions than touchdowns. I got that.
Clemson ended up 5-1-1 in the league. You guys and Carolina were both 5-2. Now, on the flip side of those numbers, though, the one record that is holding up here is you still hold the single season record for the Chicago Bears for passing yards with 3,838 in 1995 and touchdowns. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yep, it is pretty good. And it's unfortunate to me that it's still hanging around like it is.
You don't want it anymore.
It's not a burden, but I'm just saying, like, it's been way too long. You know, like you were mentioning, the game's changed. It really has. It really, like, it's all shotgun now, and you get credit for a pass being completed when someone's motioning in front of you, and you accept the snap and literally shove it forward 6 inches,
right?
And they go for a touchdown. That's touchdown pass. And so the fact that no one's broken that record, because we didn't have that. We didn't run one play out of shotgun. Never. I never took a shotgun snap in the NFL. And so every rules change obviously favors the offense. And so they're very nitpicky on how much receivers can get bumped around, on how much quarterbackers can get, if you blow on them too hard, that's a penalty. And so it's crazy to me how nobody has broken what would now seemingly be an easy record to break.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, 38, 16 games too. That's the one thing about the NFL now, though.
Yeah.
They've kind of gone with single season, still only, they gave them the record no matter what, which I don't necessarily agree with. There's some NC State and college records now too, where they're, guys are playing 5 years. So it's like.
Correct. And there's 14, 15 games in a season now.
Yes. So
this
isn't Ted Brown's rushing record.
No.
when you that's some.
So anyway, I think my personal feeling is that's got to change when it comes to the Bears and selecting the right guy, which I think they're on the verge of. I think the Lions this year. This year's Lions are next year's Bears.
I could see that.
I think they've made a lot of right moves so far, a lot of them, all in basically 2 years.
Yeah.
And so I think they're heading in the right direction. I like that they've gotten rid of Luke Getsy and whoever else on that offensive staff they've gotten rid of, because they've been terrible.
Need a little reset.
They do.
The name of the book is The Ultimate Comeback. You can get it on Amazon. I read it yesterday. I read it in one day. It's very, again, powerful story from Erik Kramer, former NC State quarterback, former NFL quarterback. Before I let you go, you really got on my radar 3 years ago when Dan Wetzel wrote about you. And I'm just kind of curious how that kind of came about, because I thought he did a really good job.
He did. He certainly did. So
how you get on the right path too.
Yeah. So the way that came about with Dan was that Bill Keenest, who at that time was still the Lions media relations director, reached out to Dan. And so Dan did a really good job of, he was the first guy to really write a story. And not only did you see that, but the guy who I co-wrote this book with, William Croyle, read it. He must have said, I've probably read that thing 10 times.
Yeah.
And he reached out to Anna Durgan, who we've been friends since high school. And I don't know how he reached her, but he did. And so that began the research project of Bill Croyle to write, to want to co-author this book. And so when I first met him, I've never actually seen him in person.
Oh, really?
Because he lives back. in Kentucky across the river from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So we were actually going to meet last week in Detroit because he has a son. He and his wife have a son that live not too far away, but because of the blizzard that came, they were going to fly and something like that. So yeah, it just didn't work. But so in any event, that's what led to this book, was William Croyle reading that Dan Wetzel article. And then he did some research backward from there.
Sure. I mean, it's fascinating read, powerful words, powerful story. Erik Kramer, The Ultimate Comeback, Surviving Suicide, Conquering Depression, and Living with a Purpose. Erik, I appreciate you taking some time today, and best of luck to you in all your ventures in helping people. I think that's really the best part of all of this is I'm sure the number of people who have reached out to you, and like I said, some of your former teammates, and I know you were back here at NC State not that long ago. I'm sure those are all the kind of moments that really kind of keep you going too.
They are, and it's amazing how. I mean, my thought about this when I was contacted by William Croyle and I talked to Anna was, I go, this, because so much has happened. So much happened that's not even in this book.
Okay. And the whole being basically robbed by one of your wives part, I was pretty deep in the book. I was not expecting that part. So
right.
I was just kind of even, everything with your family and your dad and getting to the pros. Like I said, that type of struggle probably seems insignificant at this point. Like you point out often in the book, you couldn't win the damn job at a JUCO in California. And here you are starting in the NFL. So it's fairly amazing, all of the different parts of it. It's real, like I said, very powerful.
Yeah. Well, I as you mentioned earlier, I've been the feedback that I've received from either people like you that I've literally just met, but have done some research, or people I've known my whole life and everyone in between. It's just been very gratifying to know that people who thought they knew me, they would say, I thought I knew you and really didn't. And now that I do, so in that way, it's gratifying, because my thought initially to Anna was, this would be something good to do to preserve, kind of as a letter to both Griffin and Dylan. And then along the way, I realized that, this is going to be really helpful to folks. And that's exactly what it's been. I can't tell you how many people have said, I either somebody I know or myself have suffered depression. A guy's coming over later today with, I live in the LA area. Guy's coming over later today with Fox LA. And we were talking on the phone last night. He goes, you probably don't know this about me, that I was shot 5 times, not by myself, but I've survived too. And he goes, look me up on Google. I was like, all right. But I mean, that's what this story, I received something from somebody I've never met. He reached out to me this morning. He goes, I'm reaching out to you. I don't have Facebook. I'm reaching out to you on my wife's Facebook. I played for Coach Sheridan at Furman. He goes, I used to sit in the stands with your dad watching practice. And he goes, and I had father issues myself that got resolved. And so, it's just been, I guess, to put it mildly, moving to me.
Erik Kramer, The Ultimate Comeback. And also, now I did watch the Jay Glazer podcast. I just want you to know it's very difficult for 18-year-old Joe right now not to squeeze in a Barry Sanders question, but I'm not going to, because I'm going to try. Go ahead. I'm going to get Barry Sanders on this podcast to tell an Erik Kramer story. So
good luck doing that, because he's very hard to get a hold of, even for me. But go ahead and ask me one Barry Sanders question.
No, you're good, man. I mean, when you see greatness like that, like you kind of say with Glazer, like it didn't even make him flinch, but the rest of us were kind of like, yep, That's Barry. That's
Right.
what he does. So great memories. And again, Erik Kramer, the ultimate comeback, name of the book. I appreciate you, man, and best of luck to you, and be good. Okay.
Joe, thank you for your time, and I'll do just that.